I've never thought that we were closer to nuclear war, World War III, now than at any other time in my previous 35 years in the Army. There's no guarantee that he's actually going to stop the NATO border unless we can deter him.
Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So I have some bombshell information that I have to share with you guys about what is going on. We are not being told the entire truth about what is going on the Eastern Front. So you need to stick with me because this is of such critical importance that people need to understand that we are truly in a WW3 situation like we've never been before. So please stick with me. Okay, so first I want to get out of the way. A lot of people have been wondering, what is Russia doing in the Ukraine? Why aren't they just steamrolling through the place? Well, the answer is simple. They're not employing a scorched earth policy, okay? This is not like a shock and awe campaign like we've seen in Iraq where, they went in there and they bombarded the entire place. Didn't matter who was affected. Sure, there was a little bit of surgical precision here and there, but they weren't very careful with respect to collateral damage, at least as far as I know. Now, Russia's campaign is much different. You need to understand that they are trying to target military installments, and they're actually trying to minimize soldier casualties as well. And here's why, okay? As I said in the previous video, they don't want to be creating resistance fighters. Every soldier that you take out, you are basically creating several more soldiers, because those soldiers aren't just, people who are grown in a lab. Those are people who have family members. They have mothers, fathers, brothers, cousins, and those people are going to be fuming if the Russian military actually took them out. This is why they're trying to avoid casualties. And I think that a lot of the Russian military are been given this order to try to minimize casualties as much as possible. That's what I'm presuming, because let's face it, if they wanted to go in there and completely bombard that place, they easily could. They easily have the weaponry to do that without losing a guy, to be brutally honest. You'll notice that the power is still on, the water's still flowing, you still have video footage, you still have internet, you still have comms, you have all those things in the Ukraine. If that was truly a nation under siege in a grand scale, scorched earth sort of way, you wouldn't have any of those things. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, that must mean that, Putin's a great guy and everything. No, that's not what I'm saying. If anything, they want to use Ukraine as a staging ground for future incursions into other surrounding territories. And the reason for that is simple. It's the same reason why NATO wants to expand its influence. It's the same reason why China wants to expand its influence. One of these blocks of power want to rule the world. And Russia knows that if Ukraine goes, it's basically out of that fight, okay? It's a bronze medalist for forever. And they don't want to be a bronze medalist. This is why they're taking great precision not to make Ukraine a liability more than an asset. They want to maintain it as an asset. And you got to remember that a lot of the military who serve in the Ukraine and Russia probably know each other from times gone by from the Soviet Union. That wasn't too long ago, 30 years or so ago. So they want to preserve that infrastructure. They want to minimize any begrudging family members who are grieving the loss of their military men. So that's why they want to minimize the casualties, okay? Now, there's more information that you need to understand because, guys, this is truly shaping up to be a real World War III situation. You remember that video I made about the Red Cross with the MREs and stuff? Well, apparently now the Red Cross is seeking donations. So that's how bad it's got, is that they're seeking donations for food to send over to the Ukraine. So you can pretty much guess that that's what it was for, that's why they were trying to buy up all this stuff. Now, I'm getting messages from all over the world on a minute-by-minute basis from people who are saying that there's increased military mobilization within their country. Sorry guys, the battery on my main camera just died, so we're going to have to downgrade the quality a bit for the rest here, not that you care. Now, another major thing that has happened, which has basically killed the Nord Stream pipeline entirely, is that Germany has decided that they're going to send weapons to Ukraine. This is huge. This is basically World War III, because Russia was going to build this pipeline to send all their natural gas so they could bypass Ukraine, because they're paying Ukraine $2 billion a year or something like that to route this natural gas to Europe, which Europe heavily depends on. This has basically killed that deal. And this is major. This is major, 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 because this is going to put Russia in a very, very tough spot. I don't even know what the outcome is going to be at this point. Russia does have other options. They can sell their gas to other countries, China, they can go east, I suppose. We know that Russia is going to be banned from the SWIFT banking system. We know that they're now starting to ban certain flights from flying over their airspace, and Russia's a big, big country, and a lot of countries fly over it. So that's huge. That's major, major, major. This is getting big. NATO, for the first time ever, is going to be deploying commandos to the front line, a 40,000 strong response force. Okay, this is going to be on countries just butting up right against the Ukrainian border and Belarusian border, I presume. So this is really getting big. So somebody's going to make a big move pretty soon, because Russia, it's do or die at this point. This is the scary part. Okay, if they aren't able to accomplish their goals in Ukraine, then it's going to be existential, and you're going to have somebody who's basically backed up against the wall, who's isolated from the rest of the world, and who has the capability, with a push of a button, to annihilate every NATO city on the planet. That is scary. This is not, Saddam Hussein, or pick your other dictator that they've taken out in the past. This is Russia, okay? This is a country who's spent the last 70 or 80 years perfecting nuclear annihilation. So just keep that in mind. This is deadly serious. Now, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but that's Russia's strategy. They're trying to preserve all of the infrastructure in Ukraine. People are saying, oh, the Russians are going slow, they're losing. Look, if they wanted to, they could go and blitzkrieg that place in a few days. To be honest, it took the United States about 30 days to do Iraq. And I'm not sure of the collateral damage that was caused on that population, but I'm sure it was pretty high, possibly higher than what we're seeing now. And another thing you got to remember is a lot of the higher ranking Ukrainian officials, if I were them, this is just a tactic that people use in war. If you're being bombarded and besieged, you're going to hide in schools. You're going to hide in, obviously the kids are going to be out of the schools, but you're going to hide there because you think if the enemy targets you there, then it's really bad optics. It's war crimes. Okay. So there's lots of underhanded strategies which are being employed here. Now, I get messages from both sides. Okay, both campaigns, the pro-Russian campaign and the pro-Ukrainian campaign. And I listen to all of them equally. I try to balance them all out equally. So I'm not here to say what's good or bad. I'm just here to say this is what's happening on the ground, and this is what we as preppers need to prepare for. And people along that Eastern Front, you need to prepare for things to get wild in the next few months. That's all I'm going to say. So this message is from Prepper Princess. Shout out to her. Go check her out. She's doing more financial videos lately. Maybe she's going to get back into the prepping stuff. I'm not sure. She says, hey, Nate, so you don't know that I do come from a long line of military relatives and friends. In fact, 90% of my friends and family are members in the military. When someone is deployed for war, they do not tell us because loose lips sink ships, right? They usually text us, not via any public media like Facebook or anywhere that anybody can read it, and I can attest to that because I've gotten a lot of other similar messages like this. I received a direct text from a friend that is high-ranking Army, officially stating, I'm going overseas, I'm leaving tomorrow. Where are you going? Somewhere cold. This is cold in military families that they're being deployed for war. So regardless what the politicians say, the United States is becoming involved. I do not know if I'll put anything out about this on my channel, but this is bigger than anticipated. I do not want a WW3 to happen. I second that. I don't think anybody wants that to happen because it would be hell on earth for many generations to come, and hope that it's just a training exercise. Yeah. But given the fact that my friend did not give a coming home date, it's likely that we are going to war. You know, the sanctions we put on Russia will have a large impact on our oil and food prices, and in fact, it is an act of war, and I agree. Some people say sanctions, not an act of war, only embargoes are an act of war. Sanctions are a way of trying to kill a country's economy, downgrade the people's standard of living, and as such, I do believe it is essentially an act of war. which is just to respond in kind to what Russia is doing to Ukraine. I understand that, but we need to be braced for the repercussions. Cyber attacks. Now that Russia is not getting Nord Stream 2 and that they know that the next card that's going to be played is messing with the Ukrainian natural gas supply. The ex-president of Poland said that Russia should be attacked in the event of an alleged aggression by the Russian Federation directed at Ukraine. This statement was made by ex-president of Poland, Lech Wales. The whole world must mobilize and prevent an attack on Ukraine. If Putin attacks Kiev, there should be immediate action and attack on Moscow. Is this guy out of his mind? An attack on Moscow? Are you crazy? Do you want to seal the fate of every human being on this planet? I mean, I don't know if this guy, how old this guy is, if he's lost his mind. I don't know anything about him, but that is just crazy talk. Thank God he's not in charge, because we'd probably all be dead right now. If they went for Moscow, nukes would be flying. And here's the thing, guys. Russia has less to lose at this point in the game. And I would almost suspect that if they let one fly, I don't know if NATO would respond in kind. Because we would know, I think at that point, it depends on where they targeted. Like if Russia were to target major military installation with a nuke, perhaps it was just more strategically useful for them to do that than to launch a bunch of conventional weapons. You know, I don't think NATO would necessarily, I don't think it would be like an immediate tit for tat, because we know where that would go, and it would go into a bad place really, really quickly. So Putin this whole time has kind of been calling NATO's bluff. So I just worry that maybe they'll let one rip just to see what happens. You know, but who knows anyways. Now, here's another message I got from someone. And once again, this is just their perspective. I wanted to share some information to you that I'm not hearing others talk about. Whoever controls the flow of energy controls the world. Holding title as the greatest superpower. To understand the current situation, we need to go back in time. Trump set out to make U.S. energy independent, but that was not all. He wanted to be the #1 exporter of the world of liquid natural gas and other fuels, oil, stuff like that. His great nemesis was Nord Stream 2, the only thing in his way. So that's going to be the pipeline that goes under the Baltic Sea, I believe, from Russia directly to Germany. Then it's going to be distributed from there, instead of the situation they have right now where it's going under Ukraine and they're paying Ukraine to pump it through there. So Trump worked to sell the idea of using LNG imports, liquid natural gas imports, to replace Russian imports, claiming it was protection from Russia, which was code for "we will dominate the market." It wasn't long before Trump achieved making the U.S. the largest exporter of liquid natural gas in the world. Now, the thing that got me about this perspective is that usually the pro-Trump campaign is also kind of pro-Russia in a weird way. So this is one that actually puts them against each other. And then he goes on to say, to keep the U.S. place of power, he put sanctions on Nord Stream 2, stopping Russia's advancements towards independence and power. Both the EU and Russia strongly condemn the sanctions. There appears to me to be a divide in NATO between countries which want to do business with Russia and countries that, you know, still want to maintain the U.S. because they know that the U.S. is kind of a protection against that old world Soviet system. So, you know, they're kind of back and forth. And Germany's, of course, smack dab in the middle. That's where the Berlin Wall was cut right across, right? So fast forward to the Biden administration, and you'll find some things never change. The ambition is still the same. Behind the scenes, a lobbying war has been taking place over the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Ukraine spent millions lobbying against Nord Stream. Russia pays Ukraine $2 billion a year in transit fees. Nord Stream would have meant that Putin no longer had to rely on Ukraine for the transport of natural gas. And of course, if they take it over, then they obviously don't have to pay, right? And of course, if they take it over, they get all that military that they can then bolster their own military forces with and have an even larger military. There's lots of infrastructure in Ukraine. It's a country that's rich in minerals, in resources, in agriculture. So they don't want it to be a liability. They don't want to have guys on street corners with guns. They want to go in there, finesse people, Make people feel comfortable, make people feel safe. And I know a lot of people don't think this when you're looking at these media reports, but you need to understand the spin of this stuff. Most people aren't going to do the digging to understand what's really going on. And I don't proclaim to know what's really going on, but I know it's a lot more complex than what we're seeing on the surface. People out there, people who are running the world are straight gangsters. Okay. Remember when Vladimir Putin brought his $200 million yacht back, a couple weeks before the shizzy hit the fizzy? Well, people should have known that it was going to go down at that point. But every one of these guys in all of these countries, they're all gangsters, man. And we're just along for the ride, I guess. So moving forward, Biden threatens to shut down the pipeline if Russia invaded Ukraine. Biden claimed it was a measure he would take to punish Russia if they invaded Ukraine. And of course, because they're the biggest player in NATO, I guess they can do that in other people's countries. Going against his own word, Biden pulled the trigger and shut down Nord Stream, even though Russia had not yet invaded Ukraine. I didn't know that was the case. Biden knew the stakes. Actions speak louder than words. Had Putin not acted, he would be admitting defeat. Interesting. Very interesting. So listen to that. According to this guy's perspective, it's kind of a pro-Russian perspective in a way. I'm not saying that it's true. There's probably more to the story, because every time, I get pulled over to the Russian side, somebody says, no, wait, Nate, there's something over here. So, I'm trying to learn both sides. I genuinely am. Biden appears a knight in shining armor, but he leveraged war. How easy the people are fooled when they don't understand the politics behind the scenes. So this isn't necessarily saying that Putin's good or bad. This is just saying that there's this war over resources and money, and this is the case. Now that they're trying to send weapons into Ukraine, it's going to be interesting to see what Russia does now, because now they're going to be in a predicament where the war is going to get bloodier than they perhaps wanted it to be. This is why Putin made his appeal to the military to take up arms against your high-ranking officers, so that we don't have to go in and do what we can do, because they have the means to do it. Second largest military in the world, has the most nuclear weapons in the world, likely, probably more than we even know. So guys, I hate to say it, but this means the situation is a lot worse than I thought even yesterday with the WW3 has started video I made. I mean, this is now a situation where it's going to be existential for Russia. They have to make some kind of move. Like, if they don't keep Ukraine, it's over for them. And then when it's over for them, that's when the nukes start flying, I think. I could be wrong about that. Of course, that means China's going to make a move. China's pretty much shown their allegiance with Russia at this point, even though the Russians and the Chinese don't necessarily trust each other either. Because remember, a whole enemy of my enemy is a friend type thing. That only lasts until that other enemy is gone. So, Russia has to keep some of its forces on watch on its own Eastern Front. But, anyways, guys, it's a complicated situation, but it is not looking good at all. Any euphoria you're seeing in the markets right now has not priced a lot of this stuff in. Maybe the energy markets are pricing it in with oil and natural gas, particularly gold and precious metals. I don't think it's priced that in yet. And I think that Bitcoin and crypto might get a bump from this, just because it's going to be a means for Russia to transfer money in and out of the country via cryptocurrency. At least I think, as far as I know, they're still going to be able to use that. They might not be able to use the SWIFT system, but they can still have money exchanged into crypto. And maybe that means that countries are going to start cracking down on crypto to completely cripple the Russian economy. And indeed, there's going to be pressure from the inside, from Russia, to stop the aggression. There's going to be attempts to probably foment coups within Russia. But remember what I said last time. It's much easier to do that in a democratic and free society like we have here, because we live in a grass house. Whereas authoritarian type societies like Russia, like China, I know Russia is not as authoritarian as it used to be, but it still is a lot more strict in a lot of ways. It's a lot harder to do that kind of stuff there, okay? Because they crack down on it right away because they know how high the stakes are. I just can't see it happening in that way. And somebody had mentioned to me, Nate, if Putin's mental health did start to decline as a result of all the stress of being suddenly the pariah of the world, the bad guy, then the Duma, which is the Russian legislature, would put him on blast and would get him out of there and make sure that, he wasn't able to make those calls, those nuclear calls. But you got to think, a guy like Putin, who's been in power for as long as he has, he's got to have some pull. And I'm not saying I think that he's going to immediately go to do something unhinged as soon as he feels backed into a corner, but this is a very unique spot for Russia to be in that it hasn't been in for a long, long time. This is a Cold War that we are in right now, and people need to understand it, and it's about to be a hot war. So, as I've been saying for weeks now, stockpile those preps because it's not looking good. Thanks for watching, guys. Canadian Prepper out.